Kia ora koutou. This presentation introduces you to the Wellbeing at School Toolkit. This is a ministry-funded free online set of tools designed to help schools build a safe, caring climate that actively deters bullying. Since its launch in 2012, around 3/4 of all Aotearoa New Zealand schools have registered to use the toolkit. The Wellbeing at School Toolkit supports schools to self-review. It provides psychometrically robust surveys for students and staff, a self-review cycle, and other resources to assist schools. The Ministry of Education funded the initial development of the Wellbeing at School Toolkit and now funds web hosting and some support for schools. The surveys explore student and teacher perceptions of the extent to which aspects of school life create a safe and caring social climate that deters bullying. The toolkit focuses on whole school self-review and, crucially, it includes the voices of both students and teachers. Today we'll briefly cover some background to the toolkit and how the surveys, reports and support resources work together in a practical review cycle to guide needs analysis and planning. Research tells us that school climate and practices influence bullying behaviour. International and New Zealand research shows bullying is not evenly distributed. Some schools with similar profiles experience very different levels of bullying. As similar schools have different rates of bullying, this suggests that the school system, that is, its practices, norms and climate, can impact on bullying behaviour. Additionally, New Zealand has relatively high rates of bullying by international standards, and many students don't tell adults when they're being bullied. The key takeaway here is to look closely at the systems and climate that either reduce or enable bullying, and that's where the Wellbeing at School Toolkit comes in. Explanations for bullying have shifted. Rather than focusing only on individual bullies and victims, we now recognise bullying as a systemic group process shaped by peers and adults, by classroom and school environments, by home and community contexts, and even by broader societal norms. That means effective solutions are also systemic. They address culture, relationships, expectations, and everyday practices across the school. The Wellbeing at School student survey focuses on protective factors. The reports help you know whether students feel they belong and are safe to learn, whether they have strategies to manage their well-being, whether empathetic and pro-social behaviours are typical, and whether students know how to solve social problems, seek help and be resilient. We also look at whether student voice and leadership are supported, because student input is itself protective. Let's explore the toolkit. We've underpinned the Wellbeing at School tools by using research and theory in the design of the self-review cycle. Longer-term studies of anti-bullying interventions often show short-term success followed by a return to previous behaviours over time. For this reason, we have grounded the use of the Wellbeing at School tools in a 5-step self-review process that's designed to be cyclical, long-term, and managed by the school, so they have ownership over it. The purpose of the tool is to support schools to build a safe and caring climate. It's about understanding what matters and how people feel. So this is a climate tool, not a culture tool. The two are not synonymous. Climate is mood, morale, and how people feel. It refers to the quality and character of school life. It's based on students, whānau and staff's personal experiences of school life and reflects norms, values, relationships and organisational structures. Climate describes the shared perceptions of the people in a group or organisation. Culture includes how people feel about the organisation and the beliefs, values and assumptions that provide the identity and set the standards of behaviour. We see school culture through wellbeing policies, external programs, staffing choices, reporting, behaviour management, classroom design, cultural response, timetables. So if culture is how we do things around here, then climate is the day-to-day feel, whether interactions are safe, respectful and inclusive. Climate is a primary leverage point for shaping culture. So the key questions become, how do we know we're making a positive impact on safety and belonging? Are our interventions working for all groups of students? Are our vision and values working for all? The Wellbeing at School toolkit includes surveys for students and teachers, plus a school self-review tool for the review team. It includes data reports that make patterns visible, overall and by groups, so you can have well-informed, strengths-based conversations about what the data tells you and where you might go. There are also support resources, from guidance on interpreting data to ideas for planning and action. It's just as important to be clear about what Wellbeing at School isn't. Wellbeing at School toolkit is not an individual diagnostic or screening tool. Student data are anonymous and only reported in groups, so it's not used to identify individual students. If you need targeted tools for individual wellbeing checks, there are other options like Travellers or Heads. Wellbeing at School sits alongside those. It gives you a whole school picture that you need to steer climate and systems. Think of wellbeing at school as mapping the layers of school life that contribute to a safe, caring climate and to social emotional wellbeing. We've structured the student and teacher tools so they explore 4 layers of school life, commonly discussed in the literature. These are called aspects. They are school-wide climate and practices, teaching and learning, community partnerships, pro-social student culture and strategies. And the 5th aspect explores students' experiences of aggressive and bullying behaviours. An important idea here is influence and alignment. Some of the layers are more directly within your sphere of influence, like leadership decisions, policies, classroom practices. Others, like broader community or societal influences, aren't fully controllable, but they're still connected. The goal is to align what's within your sphere of influence so it supports what's beyond your immediate control. We've also introduced 2 new sub-aspects: fairness and racism. Do students learn strategies to report or address unfairness and racism? Do adults set clear expectations about fairness and actively respond to discriminatory behaviours? Related items also ask about students' experiences of racism or exclusion. Resilience strategies. How well does the school support coping strategies? Do we encourage persistence and self-regulation? Do students experience a caring environment where teachers listen? These sub-aspects strengthen the way that the tool helps you see and respond to inequities. After you complete the Wellbeing at School surveys, your school receives confidential online reports You'll see a School at a Glance report to get the big picture, aspect reports to dive into the 5 areas, and item reports that let you explore responses more closely, including the ability to use filters like gender and ethnicity. Kahuiako and clusters can also access aggregated reports, and the website includes resources to interpret findings. Our education advisors can also support with analysis hui that are tailored to your school data. This is an example of the School at a Glance report. These circular reports are designed to represent each school as a system with different dimensions or aspects. The reports give a broad overview of the wellbeing at school data by aspect and sub-aspect. They can be used as a starting point to look for patterns or differences that can be explored more fully in the more detailed report types. The Aspects at a Glance report is a box plot that's produced for the student survey only. Once a minimum of 10 primary or intermediate secondary student surveys have been completed for the same year, aspect reports can be viewed as an overall picture. This report provides you with information about the extent to which students agree that each aspect and/or sub-aspect is reflected in school life. It enables you to explore overall patterns of response within your school, as well as recognise similarities and differences among subgroups. The Aspects at a Glance report needs to be read in conjunction with the scale descriptions to get the most meaningful information from the data. The box plots are presented on measurement scales, each of which has an associated scale description, showing typical student responses for different parts of the scale. The item report is made up of strip graphs that provide a summary of how groups of teachers or students responded to each survey statement. Item reports can be generated for students based on the aspects and teachers based on the questions and sections of the survey. The reports provide you with detailed information about how students or teachers responded to each of their respective survey questions. All item reports use survey scores based on the raw data. The strips show the proportions of respondents who answered in each agreement category. These reports will be most helpful after the School at a Glance and the aspect reports have been studied. They will enable a more detailed analysis of any areas of interest and will provide the ability to compare some responses from staff and students. A number of questions in each of the surveys are very closely related, and even though these are reported differently, an indicative comparison is possible. Change in school climate is real and it's measurable, but it's not instant. Research and wellbeing at school experience suggests meaningful, embedded change typically takes 2 to 5 years. That's why the self-review cycle matters. Rather than a one-off snapshot, this is iterative and a long-term process. The change needs to be systemic. The most powerful use of the Wellbeing at School surveys is strengths-based sense-making. Start with what's going well. Where do students and staff already experience safety, fairness, or caring relationships? Then look at the gaps. Which groups aren't experiencing these to the same degree? Where are there mixed signals, for example, positive values on paper, but inconsistent daily practices? Use the 5 aspects to check alignment. If you choose 1 or 2 strategic priorities, for example, improving help seeking and classroom relationship routines, do your school-wide systems support those? Do classroom practices reflect them every day? Are students part of the solution through leadership? The aim is coherent signals across layers so the day-to-day climate matches the values on the wall. Getting started is straightforward. Schools register and administer the surveys through NZCER Assist, our online platform. The Tumuaki grants permission, and from there you can set up the student and teacher surveys and the leadership self-review. Once responses come in, reports will be available on the website for you to review and plan conversations. Both the toolkit and support resources live on the Wellbeing at School website. You'll find guidance on interpreting reports, examples of action planning, and contact details for the help desk. Wellbeing at School gives you a clear picture of your current climate, helps you spot strengths and gaps, and helps support aligned actions across layers of school life. When students feel they belong, are treated fairly, and know how to get help, bullying behaviours reduce and learning thrives.